Hello, good afternoon, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of intense racing action in the one and only Middle of the Pack Racing League Winter GR86 Championship for 2025, as proudly brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. The scene is set. It is round 4 of 8. The Free Content Cup is coming to a close as of this round, and we are here in the United Kingdom in the picturesque countryside for what is the Oulton Park circuit. A circuit which is synonymous with domestic and international motorsport in the United Kingdom, whether it be the likes of the British Formula 4 Championship, the British Touring Car Championship, or British GT, or looking further afield to the Formula 3s of old, is a circuit which is absolutely rampant with elevation changes. With severe elevation changes from corner to corner and over the entirety of the lap, it is no wonder why this circuit is considered to be a bit of a British roller coaster ride when it comes to road racing, in the fact that to do well here, you've got to be fully committed from corner to corner, and with track position being so key as a result of its narrow road racing surface, if you are going to be looking for overtakes, you're going to have to run bumper to bumper, and to be held on the brakes, that's the only way you're going to make those overtakes happen. But as the drivers get ready to do battle today, well, of course, with this being a fourth round of the championship, it does mean it's a feature race round, and that is only going to mix things up further because there's no qualifying store today, as we'll come to our schedule shortly, and therefore we're going to expect overtakes to abound in order to see our drivers run their way up through the running order and potentially settle who is going to be at the Free Content Cup champion in both the Pro and the AM classes. But where are my manners? I haven't welcomed you all to this broadcast, of course, from circuit side. It's live, but the race itself is not, because this is a post-round broadcast brought to your viewing pleasure. We are currently live on two media platforms. We're available on YouTube at youtube.com and search for TX141 at TX, alternative Paul Walsh, and welcome to you guys and girls tuning in via YouTube. Alternatively, you could be tuning in via Twitch at twitch.tv/TX141, and welcome to you guys and girls tuning in via Twitch. Now, what do we mean by the fact this is a post-round broadcast? Well, whilst the broadcast is live, the racing itself is not, and we're taking a look back at all the racing action as if it were live from Wednesday the 19th of February, with today being Saturday the 22nd of February 2025. Therefore, it does mean that here in the Conti booth, we do not know what happens over the course of the practice session that's currently ongoing or the upcoming feature race. It's all raw, new and live to us, and therefore for you guys and girls tuning at home, it'll be as close as possible to the raw live viewing experience. And we do ask, of course, there's no spoilers put in the chats if you do know what happens or who the winners are or any details in particular. And as always in the quarantine booth, you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britney Spit, bringing you all the racing action as it unfolds. And speaking of our schedule for today as it unfolds, times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinate Time UTC, as we can see in just over 10 minutes time, we'll be heading to the grid for our feature race, 50 minutes in duration, with all of the drivers there giving it their all of what will be 5:15 today. But as we come into today then, what has been the story so far and what is still lying in wait? Well, we can see we are now at the end of the Free Content Cup, as mentioned only moments ago. It's round 4 of the championship, and last time out we were also in the United Kingdom for the start of a double header at the Snetterton 300 circuit. Then we saw some absolutely ravenous racing up and down the field, including what was an absolutely determined charge from Edwin Onofre to try and prevent James Logsdon from making it 3 wins out of 3 in the Pro class, but he wasn't quite able to do so, despite Logsdon ending up on 2 wheels on the last couple of corners on the final lap, but Logsdon was able to hold on there for victory after Jon Lauzon fell off due to a technical issue earlier in the race. In the AM class, meanwhile, it really has been Nick Bader's championship that he's running away with at the moment, and Blake Phillips, meanwhile, held on to the runner-up spot with some immense pressure from Mark Senegal directly behind, and well, could it be at Nick Bader's to take today in the Free Content Cup, much like it would be for James Logsdon in the Pro class? We'll have to wait and see. But after today, we're going to be having our mid-season break, therefore we've got a week's break before we return for the Roval Cup rounds 5 through to 8, and that will all begin at the Phoenix 2008 version raceway on what will be the 5th of March, after which we'll make our way to Charlotte on the 12th of March, and then to Miami on the 19th of March, and that'll be the conclusion of our sprint race rounds for the championship calendar. And of course, we do have our season finale round 8 of 8, and that'll be at the Indianapolis Grand Prix or Road Course circuit, and that'll be our feature finale on the 26th of March. But how do our drivers stand coming into this round is the question all of you will be asking. As we can see, going into round number 4, starting with the Pro Drivers' Championship, James Logsdon leads the one, 155 points to the 134 of Jon Lauzon. And arguably, all Logsdon needs to do today is finish in order to bring home that Free Content Cup crown. But meanwhile, Jon Lauzon will not let him go. Neither will Edwin Onofre, has moved into P3 ahead of what has been George Louise, and therefore, right now, the battle for P2 through to P4 is on, and the right to chase after Logsdon. Outside of the top 4, it's 100 points apiece for Aaron Lahr and Tom Bryce, with Lar only ahead based on result count back in P5, and then David Adeyi sits in P7 ahead of Julian Jones, with Shahi Zahir and Kai Moraes completing the top 10. P11, meanwhile, it's Aaron Teagot on 56 points, and that's how the Pro class stands. Coming on to the AM class, Nick Bader has been the man leading up front, and he's been absolutely putting the hammer and the pressure on both the pros and AMs around him. He's 14 points ahead of Blake Phillips, and on paper, in theory it would seem, Nick Bader is the one who is certain to take the Free Concept Cup crown. All he's got to do is finish the race and finish it within the top 5 of the AM finishers, but do keep in mind, of course, that it's overall points that are scored first and foremost, not class points, and therefore Bader's still got to stay within touch of his rivals if he wants to guarantee that cup crown. Blake Phillips isn't giving up the chase, however. He's on 116 points, 15 clear, and Mark Senegal is starting to find his form, with Roger Ganesh there sitting in P4 ahead of Billman da Costa, only a point between the two of them. And it's 91 points apiece for Glenn Bratton and Carl Peterson, with Nick Yakubov, Marlon Brandel, and Dwayne Warren completing the AM top 10. Jason C. Lin, albeit hasn't been in all the rounds so far, sits in P11, best of the rest, ahead of Navru Kumar, who completes the championship standings. And then coming on to the team's championship, we can see that Bear Pope Zero are leading the way ahead of Sunday GT Turtles, and the gap between the two teams there starting to extend a little bit further to the best part of 53 points. And right now it's definitely looking as though Bear Pope Zero are the ones who are taking command of this team's championship as we go deeper and deeper into the story. Meanwhile, in the battle for P3, where it's between the two ITD West teams, and well, whilst we've got their names on there, I should point out they are in full. Well, indeed, what is the ITD West Intense Pro Esports division inspired by Ayrton Senna, aka Gap Hunters? Well, they are trying to run away from the ITD West Senior Vice President's team, and well, the battle between the two of them, only 14 points between them, and well, we will keep to their concatenated names for the purposes of the broadcast this point onwards, but it always makes me smile when to consider the fact we've had to shorten their names, and the teams they're guided with some absolutely brilliant team names for this championship. But between the 14 points of them, then we do have what is the gap there, almost to 50 points for Le Pit Club Sim Racing, the new team on the block for this season, and they're currently holding off Caboose Crew and Slipstream Sloths, who complete your team's championship standings. But going on to our circuit for today then, well, it is the Oulton Park Island Circuit, and the Island Circuit not the longest in comparison with the international circuit, but one not to be underestimated as the drivers go racing around the circuit in the British countryside near the village of Little Budworth in the county of Cheshire in England and the United Kingdom, extending the best part of what is 2.26 miles and what is 12 corners. Is a circuit that has been a mainstay of many a championship calendar in real-life motorsport, including the British Touring Car Championship first and foremost. And its heart is a set of corners whereby a two-dimensional track image is provided by iRacing.com, and thank you to iRacing for their track maps that come as part of the brilliant simulator, where two-dimensional image doesn't do the circuit justice in terms of number, elevation changes, the sharpness of the gradients, and how blind the majority of the apexes are. However, one thing that is certain you can take from this image, there are plenty of medium and low speed corners, including of course the infamous Knickerbrook/Hislop chicane, where all of our drivers are going to be finding themselves having to carry as much speed as possible, and this is a very momentum based circuit where every mile per hour on corner exit matters in the run up towards the next corner, particularly in these Toyota GR86 Cup cars. And as our drivers roar their way around, they'll head into Old Hall Corner at turn number 1, which will all be about trying to get their latest possible apex before they head down the avenue into Denton's at turn 2, the downhill right-hander, which will see them having to brake sharply into Cascades at turn 3 and carry all that speed up past the Lakeside Straight and on towards the hairpin at turn number 4, the Island Hairpin. After that, it's a quick run back down the hilltop, albeit over it, I should say, given the fact that's the highest point on the circuit, and down they come towards the Hislop chicane at turns 5, 6, and out of Knickerbrook at turn number 7 to go uphill through Clay Hill and Water Tower, and then into the infamous Druids Bend at turn number 10, with a double right-hand apex could catch out many a driver if they don't nail that late apex, and could see them potentially losing the rear and heading towards the walls. But get it right, they'll then make their way underneath the Warwick Bridge and in towards Lodge Corner at turn number 11 to complete the lap by exiting out and roaring their way over the Deer Leap to start a new one shortly after. But going on to our rules for today, well, of course, it is a feature race round, so the rules are slightly different. The setups are provided by the Middle of the Pack Racing League. As always, it's a fixed setup series, and fuel loads are restricted to 12.73 litres. And in the feature race itself, because we've got no qualifying session, how is the grid set, I hear you ask? Well, the grid order shall be set based on a class reverse grid, and that's taken from the latest Drivers' Championship standings. And we will see the pros start ahead of the AMs. So what does that mean in layman's terms? Well, what it means is we start off with the pros, we flip them around based on who's entered and who is the lowest driver in the Pro Drivers' Championship. They start on pole overall and at the top of their class, and meanwhile the championship leader, James Logsdon, will start at the back of the pros, and then we rinse and repeat and do the same for the AMs. And what that will mean is that Nick Bader starts right at the back of the running field effectively, and his rivals all start in front, and that is what's going to make this race even more exciting in the fact the championship leaders, or at least the leading contenders in the respective championships, have to fight their way through for the biggest points. Now the race shall start by a standing start, as it's a tradition of the Winter GR86 Championship, and each driver has 2 fast pairs available over the distance. Should they pick up 15 or more instant points, a drive-through penalty will be awarded, but hopefully we don't need to see that. But as our drivers get ready to go racing then, well, we are not too far away from what is green flag racing, and well, as we do look to our drivers who are currently out there, not too many out there, with only always 4 minutes or so left on the clock in this final practice warm-up session. We look to Edwin Onofre, the driver who absolutely went on a mission last time out at Snetterton to try and take down James Logsdon, but he couldn't quite do it in the end, and Logsdon just managed to hold on. The gap between the two at the end of the race being only was a couple of attempts. That didn't really tell the true story of the pressure that Onofre placed on his rival in what was the closing stages of the race. But meanwhile, as we look from him to the AM class, here's your AM Championship leader, Nick Bader, and well, he'll be feeling as though today all he's got to do is survive and steer clear of danger. And if he finishes quite close to his rivals Blake Phillips and also Mark Senegal, he'll be taking home that AM Cup for the Free Content Cup. But of course, it's one thing in theory, it's another thing to put it into practice. He heads into the pit lane there in that definitive and rather lovely light blue into black combination livery. Looking also to Billman DaCosta there, as most of the drivers are now in the pit lane, I think just deciding to rest their nerves and get themselves fully rested before they do go racing. These feature races, of course, a little bit more taxing compared to our sprint, in the fact you've got 50 minutes of racing compared to what is the typical half an hour. And as DaCosta makes his way through Druid's corner there, gets that absolutely hooked up, very smooth and sweet. We can see that in terms of the practice times, it is very close between all the drivers. I mean, if you look at the AM class, the fastest driver at the moment is Mark Senegal, and well, between him and what is Yakubov at the back of the AMs, all 7 of our AM drivers together on the timing sheet standings there, it is only a grand total of half a second. It's the closest we have seen in the AM class, and in terms of the top 9, which is all pros, and Shahi Zahair right at the bottom end of that top 9, wins 1.2 seconds of the fastest time set in practice by James Logsdon, but the deltas are not too large. Logsdon to Onofre, just over a tenth. Then from Onofre to Jones, that's 4 tenths. That's the most sizable gap. But look from Jones to Zahair, it is 7 tenths between what is 7 drivers. Well, that's a tenth between each driver on average. That's how tight it is, and that could lead to some absolutely brilliant racing. And remember, for Logsdon, and indeed also for Onofre, also for what is their other rivals in the pro class, given what is the championship reverse order grid, well, Logsdon, Onofre, and also what will be some of the other peers, including Lauzon, they've all got to try and pick their way through. And speaking of Jon Lauzon, he's yet to set a valid time in this practice session. He is in the pit lane now. I do believe he's still having some difficulties with what is his car's pedals, and therefore he might be having to nurse them a little bit over the course of the race, and we're hoping that he's been able to get them resolved going into today, because if so, we could expect some brilliant racing from Jon Lauzon, and he really has been one of those drivers who we'd love to see do well. And the B4D privateer, the breakfast dinner privateer, he would love to land himself an absolutely huge meal of points today, but of course the only way he's going to be able to do that is getting the job done on circuit. But as we do have an Onofre now making his way on his final full what will be practice lap here, given the fact we have got less than a minute before we start to make our way under race conditions and do go racing. Well, all the drivers right now I think itching to go. Mark Senegal out there as well for the AMs in the Sunday GT Turtles machine, the definitive what is green livery machine there, making its way around, and one of the teams that has been in the middle of the pack racing league since its inception in terms of its series on iRacing. And Mark Senegal here representing the team proudly, as he always does in the AM class. And well, as he makes one to the brakes, of course, no presence of Jason Landry this season, not quite able to make it due to personal circumstances, but he's been watching on, and the baton of leadership has fallen to Mark Senegal out of the circuit, and he flies it proudly. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, as the checker flag comes out on this practice session then for round number 4 of the championship, you know what time it is. It is time to head to the grid and see who is going to become our Free Content Cup champions in both the Pro and the AM classes. So as the circuit briefly falls silent before it now starts to come back to life, let's walk you through that starting order. Albeit we won't be able to bring up a graphic on screen for you, given the limitations on iRacing replay file, but we can give you a quick oratory breakdown. And what we can tell you is it is Aaron Tigger who starts on pole position in the pro class, and overall ahead of Kyle Moraes, who joins him on the front row. Shahi Zahair and Julian Jones line up on row number 2, ahead of David Adeyi and Tom Bryce. And it will be Aaron Lahr and George Louise who run on row number 4, with P9 going the way of Edwin Onofre. Jon Lauzon will start P10, completing the top 10 in the 5th row, and then what will be best of the rest overall, but last of our pro starters, James Logsdon, P11. Your AM pole sitter will be Marlon Brandle. He starts P12 ahead of Nick Jakubov and Glenn Bratton. Next, Billman DaCosta and Mark Senegal and Blake Phillips and Nick Bader. But all the drivers are on the grid, ladies and gentlemen. And without further ado, for round 4 of the championship, it is going to be lights out and away we go for 50 minutes of racing here at what is the Oulton Park Island Circuit, and Aaron Tiggott gets a good start as he makes his way away, and down towards turn number 1 they go for the first time today, but Shahid Zahir immediately looking on the inside as they come on around. We look to the blimp cameras, the whole field now makes its way for a bit of a run wide there from what is, I believe, the car of Kyle Morais, the yellow machine, as they come over the crest and down into turn number 1, but the whole field settling down in what is the Pro Class at the front, but meanwhile it's 2 by 2 here as they come into what is Cascades, out of Dentons and through Cascades. Edwin off there looking for the move on Tom Bryce, gets up the inside, now puts himself on the outside in the AM class. Marlon Brandle and Nick Jakubov almost 2 wide there. Brandle and the yellow machine under pressure on the Slipstream Slots camouflage car, as there's a bit of a concertina effect there. Everyone getting very close as they make the way out of the run of Lakeside, and will Nick Bader making a place there on Billman DaCosta around the outside of the corner, but now they make the way down towards Hislop chicane for the first time in anger, and onto the brakes all the drivers go, and as they do 2 wide there, that is going to be Logsdon looking around the outside of Adayi. It's getting very close, but looks so there the drivers have been able to survive it. Good racing between them, and James Logsdon out to P8 immediately. Logsdon making some very quick progress here, and I get the feeling he's not going to be giving up any time soon as they make the way up the hill. Bit of a run wide there in the rear of the picture. That is Nick Bader, who's making some progress as Glenn Bratton's got out very wide at Nickelbrook corner, and over the crest they go and in towards Druids Bend shortly. And now we'll start to see the field calm down here as they make the way through the double right in terms of just now settling in and starting to pick their battles a little bit more tactically. Of course, everyone wants to try and make blazes nice and early on, but now we do start to see what is that reflection of what is closer racing here at Oulton Park, as Nick Bader thinks about a move on Mark Senegal, but in the end too far back and just trying to psych out his rival and fake a potential move. But after 1 lap of racing, Aaron Tiggott continues to lead ahead of Shahid Zahir. Then it's Julian Jones in P3, George Louise P4, ahead of Aaron Lahr P5. There's Jon Lauzon P6, Kyle Morais P7, James Logsdon P8, David Adayi P9, Edwin Onofre P10, best of the rest, P11 is Tom Bryce, and that's all pro drivers. Then you've got your AM leader, Marlon Brandle, ahead of Nick Jakubov, with Blake Phillips completing the AM top 3. And well, from then we've got to look here at some brilliant side-by-side battling. That is Adayi versus Onofre, and Onofre's had a nightmare run coming up through Cascades. Down Lakeside they go, and even more's to come here as it's getting very tasty. Aaron Tiggott there being passed by Shahid Zahir, and also, well, it's Julian Jones, but Jones is trying to stop him from making the progress as they make the way over the hilltop, and that is going to be George Louise looking around the outside. Now if he's going to try and go outside to inside into his lots, it's brave, you can make it happen. Onto the brakes they go, Aaron Lahr squeezed around the outside onto the grass, and the big concertina occurs. Everybody there queuing up. Edwin Onofre just avoids being caught up in it all, and the Anfield now makes its way through. Most drivers have survived it to some extent, albeit Nick Bader. Bader's been caught up in it, and well, this could be huge for what is the AM Championship in terms of that free contact cut, because Bader did not want to get caught up in it, and that car is limping as we've had a further instant there. Kyle Morais and Tom Bryce have had to come in together, and we're going to have to get a replay of that when we can, but it's been a nightmare for a couple of drivers as Bader picks off Mark Senegal, and the AM class has been blown wide open with regards to that instant, as has the pro class to a degree. Meanwhile, whilst all that's going on, let's not forget we've got battles out on circuit. And this is going to be, well, that's a limping Aaron Tiggott in the background, and James Logsdon makes his way past his wounded Bearpoke teammate. Marlon Brandle comes on for us, as Blake Phillips. Jon Lauzon in the pit lane currently, I think having issues with the car. There goes Tiggott into the pit lane in the rear of your picture. So this is completely shaken up the field on lap number 2, and we've still got a lot of mileage to go. What's happening with Nick Bader here, you ask? Well, he's into the pit lane as well, and is Bader's race potentially over if they can't get their car fixed? Well, that is going to be a disaster. You can see it's collapsed slightly on the front right suspension there, or the left-hand side of your picture, and I think Bader right now might be struggling in terms of trying to get the car home. In fact, he's come on into the pit lane. He's making his way back out. So I think he's picked up a drive-through for some reason as a result of all those contacts potentially. And, well, that is only going to hurt more. But meanwhile, out of the circuit, we do have Marlon Brandle trying to keep Blake Phillips behind as these two fight over what is now the AM lead, P8 overall. And as they make the way out of the corner and upwards towards what will be the hilltop and down towards his lots, we will get a replay shortly of what exactly happened. But that was a nightmare moment for so many drivers, and it all started for a dip of the tyres on the grass for Aaron Lahr, and after that, well, the rest of the story has become history. And coming on through It's Knickerbrook corner. Brandel right now trying to hold off the fast charger of Phillips, who will feel as though this is an open goal to potentially score himself what will be his first and win of the season. And Phillips has fallen short so far 3 times he's tried, but he's finished second 3 times in a row. That's not a bad feat in any stretch of the imagination, but the problem is he doesn't want to be the man who always finishes second. He never wants to be always a bridesmaid and never the bride, as they say. And right now, Marlon Brandel will feel otherwise about this in terms of trying to keep him behind as they head in towards Lodge Bend. But now the right-hander at turn number 11 into Deer Leap they go, and as they come over the crest, what we look from them back towards the front of the field, and was a little bit of inter-team rivalry here between the ITD West drivers of Zuhair and Jones as they're trying to keep Louise behind. Louise looking to the inside here, coming down into Denton's, and then Cascades rolling through 2 wide. They go elbows out between them. Brilliant racing, and well, Jones there making sure that Louise goes a long way round at Cascades and doesn't get the run. And George Louise at this point, as we jump on board with a P3 driver, I think he's going to feel as though, okay, I know where we're playing this now, and I know how we're going to race, but Oulton Park encourages racing like this. It is the circuit that naturally gravitates towards elbows out, door-to-door racing, regardless of the classification of cars, whether it be GT3s or Cup cars, such as what you see here. And George Louise right now will know that he's going to have to work a little bit harder if he wants to make this move happen, as they head through his ops this time. Elsewhere, off-screen, I'm hearing that Edwin Onofre has been involved in an incident, and that has put him a long way down the order. In fact, I think he's come back out in P10 after running P5. We'll have to understand what's happened there. But Louise right now setting him back down for the meantime and looking to go back on the offensive in short order when he can. But ladies and gentlemen, we need to get a replay of what exactly happened at what was Hislop's into Knickerbrook corner, and I believe we do have a replay available, and here it is. Here we go, and this was the run down into the braking zone for Hislops, and well, you'll see Aaron Lyon, the Lime Green Machine there, just a little bit on the outside. Was there a bit of manoeuvring from Aaron Tiggett's car? We're not quite sure, but the whole field coming together, and well, as they did, we look a bit further back to Glenn Bratton now, as he was caught up in a subsequent incident. In fact, came straight into the scene of the incident. They had nowhere to go, really. Then Mark Signal with a tap to the 72 of what was, I believe that was Tom Bryce, and in the end, what was the machine of, I think that was, unless I'm mistaken, Kai Marai just getting caught up there as it tried to rejoin. So a nightmare moment for multiple drivers, and well, it all went very, very wrong in very quick order between them. And well, there is a quick replay of what happened. We've also got what is a further replay of what happened to Edwin Onofre only moments ago, and we will get to that very shortly, ladies and gentlemen, as we return to our racing action. And as we do come back to the racing action at the moment, in terms of your live racing action, well, we will be losing what is a little bit of race time there, and in fact it does look as though our timer at the top centre of your screen now has reset itself, but we can keep track of the laps, and we are aware of that technical issue. We are working on a potential fix for it for future broadcasts, but unfortunately we haven't been able to get a fix together so far, but we will get one together when we can. But George Louise under pressure here from David Adiyi in the battle for P3, and will ITD West trying to make it a 1-2-3 today in the pro class and overall, and they'd love to achieve that given the team have really pushed hard in previous championship in the Middle Pack Racing League in order to try and look out podiums, and Addy find himself in that position where he's got to go on the offensive as he heads out of that Druids and in towards Lodge Bend. But as he comes in towards the corner, can he look for a move here, or is he going to be made to wait? Well, the answer is he's going to be made to wait as he heads in towards that braking zone, and we're coming on out now. It's a long way to go, to be fair, and of course we do also have the pit stop. That's also going to be on the mind, given the fact our drivers don't have enough fuel to get to the end of the race unscathed with fuel capacity, and Shahi Zahair right now is not even getting to turn 1 without being under a lot of pressure from Louise as they come on through, and it does seem as though George Louise has a much better run coming out of Lodge corner, but I think he's cut the corner significantly there and has to give up this position when automated slow down, and George Louise falls back to P4, and well, that is a change. Also a change that's happened off camera. Blake Phillips has found his way ahead of Marlon Brandel for what is the lead of the AM class. Can we get a replay of what exactly has happened there in order to change the places? Well, we will try to shortly, as we just saw there at the top of your screen was David Adiyi passing Shahi Zahair down into the island hairpin, but here is the replay, I believe, as to how Blake Phillips made the move on Marlon Brandel for the lead of the AM class. And well, as we briefly lose and re-materialises, here is the replay, where it was coming out of turn 1, and Marlon Brandel on the end being caught out there by Blake Phillips, and the better run out of the opening corner on the inside into Denton's, and a smooth move there made by Blake Phillips in order to take the AM class lead. And well, that's a classic move into Cascades, and Marlon Brandel, I think, accepting that it was coming and deciding to go for P2. And as we do return to your live racing pictures, ladies and gentlemen, here we go then, back to the racing as it all unfolds. And all of our drivers right now continuing now to settle into this race. We've got a long way to go, and doing a little bit of mental maths, we are expecting there to be the best part of 30 laps, perhaps just a couple of laps over 30. And we'll give you an update on exactly how many laps we're expecting when we can. But in the meanwhile, Edwin Onofre, who's trying to recover. We didn't quite get a replay of what exactly happened to Onofre in the end, unfortunately. But something did happen to the pro driver, and now with Nick Yakubov behind, we just made the move on the slipstream sloth driver, who's nursing and wearing some of that damage that was picked up from the big incident, the big shunt at Hislop's only a few laps ago. As they come in towards turn number 1, will they stay clear? But meanwhile, here comes George Louise into Cascades there. Shahi's Air gets a nasty bit of snap understeer coming down the hill and having to point the car out in the end through Cascades. And George Louise finally finds his mark onto here. The only problem is he lost the place to what was Adayi, so therefore the place he's now gained has returned him to a P3. But I think he'll be a little bit annoyed. It's a big tail happy moment there for the Brazilian driver. He catches it together just about, and Zaire there now all over the back of him as they make the way of the hilltop and down into Hislop's this time around. In towards the braking zone they go, and well, defence absolutely spot on there for Louise. He knows where he can put the car and put it right in the middle of the road is the answer. These Toyotas, they're not too wide. They're the best part of what is about 1.9 metres wide, if my memory serves me correctly. The road racing surface, meanwhile, being the best part of about 6 metres wide. So you have got the space in theory for 3 wide if you do the mathematics there. But do you want to go 3 wide is the answer? And arguably, no, you're going to be putting your faith in what is the racing gods. But 2 wide around it, if you put the car in the middle of the road, it makes 2 wide very difficult to do as the driver's coming out. And well, meanwhile, in other news, ladies and gentlemen, whilst all this is going on, we do have some news regarding retirements in the AM class, and a double retirement here for our drivers P1 and P3 in the AM Championship. Nick Bader has had to retire, and Mark Senegal as well, which means that Blake Phillips right now, well, he's on course not just to take the AM win today, albeit early doors, I must say. We're not even a quarter of the way through the race time distance yet, but if Blake Phillips were to finish where he currently is, he would effectively take the AM Championship lead, and he would take the Free Content Cup in the AM class, with Bader and Senegal both retiring from this race. And remember, there are no drop scores in the Cups, and I do believe there's only the 1 drop score in what is the overall championship, and Blake Phillips would take the lead in the standings going into the mid-season break. And what a change of fortunes that would be. And as he pulls away from Marlon Brandle, that gap now up to 2 seconds, I think that confidence is now starting to come through. And for Blake Phillips, I think he'll be feeling as though everything now is coming up sunny side for him. As meanwhile, we look back to the front of the field, and Julian Jones and David Adayi, they have started to pull away at the very front of the field, albeit we've got a long way to go. George Louise there, you can see in P3, started to open up what is a second's gap to Shahi's Air, but then the danger man looking to try and make it 4 wins out of 4, and I get the feeling that Father Eric will be watching. James Logsdon here making his way out of Knickerbrook corner and looking to go on the offensive. His next target is Zahere, and he is the fastest driver in what is the pro class, currently matching the pace of David Adayi, who is the fastest driver as well, and therefore Logsdon trying to get the hammer down. But I say that, in fact, let me correct myself there, as he sets the fastest lap of the race. Jon Lauzon, who started from the pit lane, was effectively almost a lap down due to some technical issues. Well, Lauzon's been able to get those resolved in the car, and he is running very rapidly at the moment, setting 33.5s, and Lauzon hammering it out there. How far can he go is the big question. Well, I think at this point the answer is as far as he wants to, given the fact he's got nothing to lose. He's got a very empty circuit in front of him. His first target with Tom Bryce, but Bryce is 21 seconds up the road, so he's got a long distance to try and close down. But when you're cutting that gap down at 1.3 seconds a lap, well, it will gradually come, but how many places can he gain before all is said and done? That'll be in the mind of Lauzon. But as we look back towards your leaders, with Jones versus Adayi, this is now starting to get a little bit tasty, and Adayi looking up the inside immediately as they come off the brakes there into the island hairpin. Jones decides to roll deep in order to get the better amount of momentum up the hill, but normally what you want to try and do there is cut back in order to carry that momentum. So Jones not fighting this as hard as perhaps he could have, but I think these two are also trying to work together to make sure they don't cost each other time to what is the pack of cars approaching behind them. Because the longer they can hold this lead out and cause the cars behind to fight each other first and foremost, they naturally will inherit a bigger and bigger gap. Elsewhere on circuit, 2 wide here. This is a P3 in the AM class, P9 overall. That's Yakubov versus Bratton. And Bratton right now looking around the outside in the yellow and red machine coming into the Hislop chicane. But there's going to be Yakubov, who parks it nicely on turn 5, and he will take that position after they battled side by side on the exit, the island hairpin. Yakubov getting the move sealed and done as just up the road. We do see as they head on past Water Tower, that is going to to be Edwin Onofre on the inside to outside, and Marlon Brandel lets it go there. He doesn't want to fight it too hard, and I think his focus is on making sure he brings home P2 in the AM class in order to boost his bank account in terms of championship points. But there's a way to go, and Nick Yakubov and Glenn Bratton are closing quite rapidly as this race now moves into its second quarter. But as James Logsdon comes into the pits, and I suspect this will be for repair work on the car and also to put in the fuel that might get him to the end of the race. So Logsdon deciding it's time to pit, and well, given the fact we are expecting a roughly 31 to 32 laps here today at Oulton Park over the 50 minutes of racing, so we are 10 laps in, so we are not quite near the halfway point, and therefore it's an early pit stop from Logsdon. It's a bit of a gamble, because where does that bring Logsdon out is the question that we need an answer to. Well, here he is as he leaves the pit lane, and when he comes out in P12, he comes out clear of Billman DaCosta, and he comes out behind Kai Moraes and Aaron Lahr with a gap there. What is 3 seconds to Moraes first and foremost in P11. So Logsdon, I think, has gambled on pitting early to repair the car in order to build up what is a bit more natural pace, but he has of course sacrificed what is the ability to be able to control his strategy a bit more. But perhaps he's hoping that because he's got himself some clear air in front, at least 3 seconds of clear air, he might only catch up to the cars in front of him when they're due to come into the pits. But elsewhere we've had a spin, I believe, coming out of the island hairpin for Glenn Bratton. Do we have a replay of it is the question, and the answer is yes we do. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen, as we take a look back at what happened to Glenn Bratton only moments ago. And this was in the rundown lakeside in towards the hairpin, chasing after Nick Yakubov, looking to do battle here on the brakes, looks around the outside. Oh my goodness there, and I think figured there's a bit more width on the outside than there was, putting the left hand side tyres on the grass, brakes went on, and the rear of the car letting go, and grateful I think that the car didn't slide across the circuit and collect Yakubov, and well for Glenn Bratton holding his brakes there very quickly, knowing what was up, and well getting it back together very nicely indeed. But as we do return to your live racing action, ladies and gentlemen, well, our drive continues to push on over the distance, and we're looking at Bratton here in P9, P4 in the AM class, as he now looks to try and recover from that big slide only moments ago. Well, from here, we look back towards the leaders, and Addy and Jones still together as they come down in towards the hairpin. The gap between the two of them never extending more than what's been half a second, but have a bit of a misinterpretation there as they come out of the hairpin. Addy going very deep, and here comes Jones looking up the inside, but I think Jones backing off there, but these two taking time off each other. You can see Louise has actually closed up now. George Louise getting very close indeed as they now head into what is the Hislops chicane and out of Knickerbrook Corner, and George Louise within 1.5 seconds of the leader of this race. Shahi's ahead only a further what is 3 seconds back, so this is getting closer and closer between them. James Logsdon, of course, for that pit stop has put himself back to P11, but he'll be feeling as though he can potentially factor into this race a bit later on, and therefore this is definitely now starting to move the race in a different direction in terms of the battle for what is the victory, at least being on the podium. And Logsdon may be hoping that if these three fight each other, of course he won't really know whether they fight each other until he comes around and they've completed their pit stops, but he might be hoping that he can leapfrog his way ahead of all of them, and that would work out massively for his day today. But we'll have to see whether that's the way it falls in practice. Elsewhere out of the circuit, Aaron Lahr now over the back of Nick Yakubov, and Lahr trying to look for a move here to move into P9. And as we said earlier, our pros will fight the AMs and the AMs will fight the pros just as much as they'll fight each other in their classes. The reason being you score points first and foremost based on overall finishing position. If you're a pro, those are the only points you get, and in the AM class you only get bonus points for what is first, second and third. 3 points for first, 2 for second, 1 for third, and of course you do have the bonus points for the fastest lap and also pole position. No pole position bonus points today because we've had no qualifying session, and Aaron Lahr decides he doesn't want to play the game of battling with the AMs. He comes into the pits immediately here and gets himself out of that battle. A smart move for what is Aaron, and I think right now he's prioritising the bigger picture of this race. As we look to Tom Bryce, who's chasing after Kai Moraes, and these two unfortunate in that instant was Hislops into Knickerbrook on lap number 2, and as they come out of Lodge Bend, well, right now Lahr leaving the pit lane leads to in a bit of a different race. I believe Lahr has just come out of turn 1 on the pit lane exit. Yes, he has, as I look to my data tracker, and therefore it does mean that Moraes and Bryce locked into this battle for P14 overall, or what is P9 in the pro class, and they're just going to continue to push each other all the way because every point is critical in the later game of the championship as they come down into Cascades. But as they head through the left-hander, we look back to your race leader of Adi as he makes his way into the right-hander of Lodge Corner. And as he comes down onto the brakes, well, Jones only 4 attempts behind. Louise, meanwhile, getting a little bit stagnant in his growth now in terms of closing down the gap. And in fact, on what has been the previous lap, that gap has closed up and now it's opened up considerably. So I think there's been a bit of a mistake for George Louise. And in fact, yes, we can confirm it. You can see that 33.9 for Adi, a 34.0 for Jones, and a 34.6 practically for Louise. And well, losing half a second, if not almost 0.6 of a second to Jones. And I think there's been a bit of a wayward moment on that previous lap, which Louise will now have to try and recover from. As elsewhere, we do have James Logsdon up the inside there of Yakubov, or should I say the outside, coming through Deer Leap Corner. It's going to be a drag race here up towards turn number 1. Yakubov trying to hold on the outside as they head through the opening corner, but Logsdon will dictate the race in line. Yakubov's going to try and hold it all the way round, but he'll find the fact he's going to have to turn for a wider circumference with a bump in the road in the middle of the corner. It's not going to come to him, and therefore it does mean that Logsdon gains another place overall. He's going to fight his way through. Despite going for that early pit stop, he is now having to pick up places here. But I think for what is Logsdon, it's all about hammer time all the way to the end of what is now this race. Albeit he'll wait and see exactly where he fits into proceedings when Adi, Jones and Louise all take their respective pit stops. But as he makes his way out of the island hairpin, we do look from what it is our championship leader in the pro class to Nick Yakubov behind. And Yakubov right now just continue to chase down what is Glenn Bratton up the road. And Bratton will be his target. Keeping in mind that Yakubov does have a bit of front end damage on that GR86. And I imagine that's not helping him on the straights. That will be costing him some additional aerodynamic drag. And that may be why these places are not naturally coming to him as much as he would hope they do. Given the fact that at Navarra in the season opener, Yakubov was absolutely flying and found himself right in the thick of the battles. And well, he's been absolutely pushing for what is the top 5 in the AM class each and every round. But right now, he's got some work to do if he wants to get back onto the AM podium, given that Bratton, Brandel and Phillips are all ahead of him. As he heads down into that braking zone for turn number 11, we'll look into Glenn Bratton. Well, he's got the fast approaching presence of James Logsdon. There you can see the gap between the two of them as they head in towards another lap. Going on to lap number 14. We're almost at the halfway point in terms of time of this race. And as they head through the right-hander, well, Bratton at this point going a little bit deep there. I think feeling a little bit of mental pressure potentially from Logsdon approaching so quickly as they head in towards Denton's and down towards the Cascades. And coming through that left-hander, well, for Bratton, he's got to think on what his two perspectives in. Does he fight this or not? And I think the answer is he shouldn't really fight it too much unless he doesn't realise that Logsdon has already taken his pit stop. And well, he's going to try and hold on here as they head into the braking zone. But Logsdon in the end sails around. I think Bratton deciding to brake a little bit earlier there in order not to make it too difficult an overtaking manoeuvre. Because I think Bratton suddenly realising that actually, you know what, this is a driver who's already pitted and taken his pit stop, whereas I've still yet to take mine. So we're in two very different strategies. And where is the value in fighting? Well, as a result of that, he now fits back into P9. You can see Logsdon there absolutely sailing on through into Knickerbrook Corner. Now it's P8 and very rapidly now chasing down Marlon Brandel. As Yakubov leaves the pit lane, as I look out my Conte roof window, tries yet to peel into the pit lane, make the way past us here on the start-finish line straight, and that is Adi continue to lead with Jones there half a second behind, and it's a further 1.2 seconds to George Louise, and Louise staying with them. In fact, getting closer once again, now starting to set those more consistent laps compared to what we saw over the last couple of laps, where the gap came down and then expanded out quite dramatically, and well, Adi and Jones push each other along in the IT West machines, and that definitive black and gold livery, you can't mistake it. As we can see there, Jones just peeling right onto the outside before coming into the braking zone for the island hairpin and trying to say to his teammate, look, I don't want to fight you, we've got bigger fish to fry. And in particular, George Louise right now absolutely chasing after them. And then you do have the bigger question mark of where will James Logsdon fit back in when all is said and done, because Logsdon's pace right now is in the mid-tire 33s, whereas our drivers here are lapping in what is the low 34s, and therefore on paper at least you would imagine the theory says that Logsdon could come back out into this battle, if not ahead of it, depending on when they do take their pit stops. But as they head up the rise onto what is Watertower and then Druids Bend. We've had a bit of an incident for Marlon Brandle quite recently, and here is Brandle getting himself back together. What I'm hearing in my ear is that there was a spin coming out of the Cascades corner, and we'll try and get a replay of that very shortly as we do look from what is Brandle to Shahi Zahair, and Zahair is under pressure here from Blake Phillips. Phillips has caught up to Zahair over the last couple of laps, and I think Zahair now absolutely under pressure. Phillips is going to look around the outside here into Lodge Bend, but he's not going to be able to get it easy as they make the way on through. And keep in mind that Edwin Onofre is not too far behind, but I think Zahair might be peeling into the pit lane as Phillips just sails up the inside, and Zahair is into the pits. He's not there in the camera shot, which explains that he's got to have gone into the pit lane. And Edwin Onofre now closing onto the back, and Onofre trying to get involved in a slightly wounded car in terms it did pick up a little bit of side contact damage coming on through that instant in the early stage of the race. And Onofre trying to get more involved here in the battle for a top 5 finish as Phillips continues on as your AM leader. As the drive's coming around and up towards what is the island hairpin they go, well, we have the replay to explain what exactly happened to Marlon Brandle only moments ago, and here it is, ladies and gentlemen. And this was coming down into Cascades, and a very loose rear end there. He went a little bit wide on entry, and in the end that unsettled the car and having to snap it one way, then the other. He tried to get it pointed back in the right direction. A bit too much counter steer in one direction, and that sent it all the way round. And James Logsdon to take evasive manoeuvres there in order to avoid any potential furthering of that incident. But as we do come back to your live racing, well, still plenty more to come. And, well, as we do return to the action, we do see Onofre right now falling back a little bit from Phillips down the exit Knickerbrook corner. But then again, I think staying within arm's reach at the moment. As we do reach the halfway point in terms of time in this race, and mathematically, as we said earlier, we are looking at 31 to 32 laps at Oulton Park Island today, and therefore we are on that halfway bubble, and we've still got some pit stops to come from our leaders. The majority of drivers have now taken their mandatory pit stop, but our top 5 of Addy, Jones, Louise, your AM leader Phillips, and Onofre, that's their running order, all yet to pit. And then P6 driver James Logsdon, he has pitted, and he's very quickly trying to breathe down the necks of the top 5 and see if he can leap them all through that pit stop. And we believe in particular he'll be able to leap his way into the top 3 battle, if not into the battle for the lead, if not ahead. And it is David Addy and Jones who will be feeling that pressure in the distance, and the team will be on the radio to them to say, look, you've got to be mindful of the fact Logsdon is flying. As Logsdon sets a new fastest lap of the race, it is a 33.389. The Bear Pope Zero driver is absolutely cranking it up a notch right now in terms of those lap times, and I suspect we could see Logsdon, once these pit stops are complete, we could see him at the head of the pack by a second or two. And what a strategic move that would be, to pit as early as he could to repair the damage and also to get the fuel in the car, and then go on a mission to hunt down those places by simply being the fastest man in clear air. And I think he's called this strategy absolutely spot on. And again, let's not sing his praises too highly, because he's still got to absolutely nail these laps all the way to when his rivals make their pit stops. We've still got some distance to go on that as we look a bit further up the running order to Blake Phillips. But right now it's got Edwin Onofre looking for a move here as they head in towards Tower Corner. We briefly do lose Phillips, but he will rematerialise from the ether. And as they head through Druids Bend, well, Phillips right now for the pit club Sim Racing. However, if he's not aware of it already, he'll know soon that the Free Content Cup is definitely coming his way, so long as he finishes this race where he currently stands. And there is going to be an Onofre on the inside. 2-way they go into Lodge Corner. Phillips on the outside there, doesn't fight it as hard as perhaps he could have, but I think he has got that full process of what is, I need to focus on the AM Championship a little bit more, and the points I take home today, so long as he finishes inside the top 10, he will usurp Nick Bader for what will be the Championship lead going into the mid-season break, and of course the Free Content Cup with it. And that's why I think he's decided to let Onofre go and not make the fight as difficult as perhaps others might have. But as he comes down into Cascades Corner, looking back to Jon Lauzon, who finds himself in a little bit of a scrap here with Billman da Costa. Up the inside he goes, Lauzon. Remember, he did start from the pit lane. He has emerged into this race effectively the best part of 30 seconds down on the field, if not greater. And Lauzon now, as he makes his way on through what is Knickerbrook Corner, takes another place. We do believe he's also got to take a pit stop at some point. But Lauzon here just enjoying the racing and enjoying the time out of the circuit, despite knowing that today technical issues once again holding him back. But still in the number 77 car, he's not going to let it upset him. He's here to get those laps in and enjoy the battling as it does arise. As he exits out then in towards what will be Lodge Corner he goes. Well, we got Tom Bryce in the pit lane. Bryce makes his way down as the pit lane siren sounds to announce that a car is making its way down the pit lane, and well, in to his pit box he'll go for what will be a scheduled stop, and that'll be to take on some fuel. No tyres to go on the car. Indeed, nobody will be taking tyres here today, given the fact a tyre change will take an absolutely tremendous amount of time. It's just about the fuel. It's going to be a splash and dash and onwards towards that checkered flag, as we do see our top three making their way onto another lap, and none of them defecting to the pit lane currently. They're all deciding to stay together. 1.5 seconds covers the top three, and David Addy ahead of Jones, followed by Louise as they head onto lap number 19 of a suspected 31 or 32, and a big run wide there for Julian Jones as he comes out of turn number 1. And what I think now, Jones starting to feel as though the car's light, and with that light is coming out of Old Hall corner, well, the car now started to get a little bit more sensitive to potential snap oversteer, and well, that's always one of the things with the cars, given the fact they are light by default, and given that the fixed setup that our drivers are running, where the anti-lock braking system, the ABS has been turned down to minimal, and the traction control has been turned off entirely. Well, those rapid fire direction changes and a lot of weight transfer in these cars does mean that suddenly just overstepping the boundary and picking up some oversteer, well, that can be exacerbated even more so as George Louise continues to chase after the top two. And he's surely got to be thinking about a pit stop soon, but where will it put him? And I think that is what's stopping him from making the pit stop, is the fear of potentially coming out into some traffic, and that traffic costing him time, whereas ideally what he wants to do is he wants to try and stay as close as possible, perhaps even do a little bit of fuel saving by running in this pack and picking up the distant toe of Jones, and all that together will mean that he can potentially come out ahead or a lot closer to his two rivals in front as they come out of Druids Bend for the 19th time of asking. But under the Warwick Bridge they go. Up in front they do have a little bit of traffic to handle, and that I believe is Tom Bryce, the IT West driver, who will be seeing the blue flags very shortly, and 90 won't want to intervene in what is that lead battle as they head onto the next lap. Onto lap 20 they go, and Adayi here just keeping it cool and carrying on, albeit Jones is getting a bit closer as they head through turn number 1, and we ride on board and look back from the rear of the number 32 car, and David Adayi, for IT West Senior Vice President, we're just trying to keep it together, but Jones I think is pushing him on a little bit, but also mindful of the fact that if he does make a mistake, Jones will look to pick up the pieces for the simple reason IT West do not want to lose time, and they don't want their drivers stumbling over each other, and that's the hardest thing. When you are part of a team, you never want to quite impede your teammate until the end of the race, where you do want to prevent your teammate from making a move, as we do see Tom Bryce there giving all the space and run out nice and wide in order to respect those blue flags for the top two, and I suspect he'll do the same coming over hilltop and down in towards Hislop's corner shortly, in terms of respecting the fact that you've got the leaders coming on through as they head on through the right into left of Hislop. As they come through and in towards Knickerbrook Corner, a little bit of trivia for you, for those who are uninitiated in the ways and the corner names of Oulton Park. If you're wondering why turn number 7 on the island layout is known as Knickerbrook Corner, or that dastardly right-hander that sets up the run out of Hislop Chicane, as some drivers would refer to it, well, a long time ago, in what was a bit of redevelopment work for the Oulton Park circuit, the story goes that there was a gentleman there getting ready to do some excavation work on that corner, and once they did start doing the digging, well, they did a little bit of digging, and then they heard some startled voices at Knickerbrook Corner, and well, when they did look back, there was a couple that ran away from the corner. They eloped off from the corner, and a pair of what is ladies' undergarments, or what would be referred to as knickers in the UK language, or the UK lexicon, well, a pair of knickers were found at the corner where they were trying to take down a tree which was blocking the expansion of the corner, and hence why Knickerbrook Corner has the name of Knickerbrook Corner. A little bit of trivia for you there if you do find that coming up in a pub quiz. And it will mean as David Addy makes his way on through Cascades Corner and run his way past Lakeside and up towards Island Hairpin. Onto the brakes he'll go once again very shortly, with Jones only 3.5 tenths back, and Louise just not quite able to get close enough to be involved. But meanwhile, Blake Phillips still staying nice and close to Edwin Onofre, and the gap, and hold up a second, has James Logsdon come into the pit lane? Yes, he has, and well, I've had to interrupt my own train of thought, because Logsdon coming on in as he makes his way into the pit lane. The car's being serviced. What's happened to Logsdon, and is this a big twist in the tail? Well, we will get a replay shortly, because that is a second visit to the pits of James Logsdon, and an unexpected one at that, and we'll have to find out what's happened shortly, as here is Glenn Bratton trying to make a move on Kyle Morais. Marlon Brandle's into the pit lane as well. Bratton heading on down and in towards turn number 1. Morais just in front of him there. These two are very close together, and as they roar the way out of turn 1, let's get a replay to explain what's exactly happened to James Logsdon and what's forced him to make a pit stop. Well, this was only moments ago for Logsdon, and coming down in towards Hislop's Bend. Wasn't an error here under braking? I think the answer is going to be no. Oh, goodness me, that's unexpected. And well, Logsdon almost being put up onto the side of the car. Nasty side impact to the tyre barrier there on the apex of turn number 5, and an unexpected one at that. Well, even the fastest and the best out there can get it wrong. That's proven by James Logsdon, and that's why he's had to come into the pit lane to take a fast repair and repair the damage that's been picked up on the side of the car. And well, what an instant there for James Logsdon as we return to your live racing action, ladies and gentlemen. And as we come back to it all, that explains the story, and that surely is now going to open up what is the battle for the win here between ITD West David Addy and Julian Jones. And George Louise will be watching this from where it's P3 and thinking, if he's not aware of what's happened, if he is to find out, he'll suddenly realise that the fight for the win is definitely going to be all on the cards here between these three, where Edwin Onofre being what is a further 9 seconds back from the top three. He's in a distant purview, but he'll need the trio to fight each other in order to be brought into that battle. And it looks so right now, these three just pushing each other every step of the way and not able to get side by side at this time. But as our drivers make the way up the lines and in towards what will be at Druids Bend, you've got to imagine right now for what is it, Jones, he's got to be in the prime position here to take the lead of the race on strategy, because by being behind Eddie for so long, of course, he's had to work hard to stay close. There's no doubt about that. But when the gap, as you can see in the bottom right corner of your screen, continues to stay within 3 tenths, the amount of fuel saving he can do into these braking zones, where he just needs to lift off the throttle about 25 to 30 meters earlier than his normal braking point, and that just gives him the opportunity to sip a little bit less fuel, and in turn it means that when he comes into the pits, he might be able to spend 2 to 3 seconds less, and those 2 to 3 seconds, presuming that both he and what is Adi both have similar pit entries and pit exits in terms of the overall time of the pit, well, those 2 to 3 seconds will see the two swap places, and Jones may just be able to put enough distance between himself as a result of the pit stop in order to be able to wander off into the distance with this race and leave with Adi and, well, in fact, yes, it'll be Adi and Louise to battle for the runner-up spot over the distance. But we're on at lap number 23. No sign of a pit stop forthcoming from our top 5 as of yet. And the same for Billman DaCosta, who's yet to pit as well. He's down in P12. Let's not forget about him. But it does look as though they're all trying to go the full distance of the fuel tanks. And, well, it's no surprise there, because they don't want to get caught up. And it's almost as if right now everyone's playing the game of no, after you. No, excuse me, sir, after you, in terms of who's going to pit first. But at some point, those fuel tanks are going to be running dry, and they'll all be forced to come into the pits as George Louise continues to just try and hold on. He's back within 1.5 seconds of what is this battle for the win, but he's just not quite there in terms of being able to latch onto the back of it, and he'll be hoping he can have a faster pit stop, and that will bring him back into closing distance and bring him into the fight. Through Druids Bend they go, and then the rear of the picture, that is none other than Tom Bryce. You have to look a little bit further back before you get to Edwin Onofre, who's in P4, and we'll keep Blake Phillips at back at the moment. But Onofre not on the pace to match what is the top 3 at this time, and intriguingly, his pace right now is almost about there to the top 3, but he's not faster, and therefore that means that gap's not really coming down at all, as he just sees him staying in P4 at this time. But speaking of pit stops that we were wondering when they would happen, David Addy into the pits as James Logsdon's car still being serviced there in the pit lane, and well, as it's being serviced for Logsdon, that is putting him further and further down the run, as Blake Phillips also in, so he decides enough's enough in following Onofre, so Addy pulls himself out of what is the running formation for the top 3. He's the first one to pull the pit stop, and well, Julian Jones now with 1.7 seconds between himself and Louise will be getting the hammer down here and feeling as though, okay, I've got clear air on circuit, now I've got to go absolutely all in to open up that gap, and also he's got to go all in if he wants to get back ahead of Adi. If he hasn't been able to save the fuel and have a shorter stationary time in the pit lane, well, that is going to be the big question that we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But he comes down here into the Hislop chicane, and well, with approximately a quarter of the race time now remaining, based on a little bit of quick mathematics, I can tell you one thing, Jones right now absolutely attacking this lap and looking to try and set personal best as much as he can, and George Louise doing the same. So both drivers now goading each other on here, and I think they're both aware of the fact that with Addy pulling himself out of the equation, that their pit stops are upcoming very shortly, and therefore they've got to attack as much as they can all the way to that stop, as the number 10 driver there makes his way out of Druids Bend. But as he comes on down and under the Warwick Bridge, with those pit stops not being too far away, our top three now, plus also Billman da Costa, Dan and P12 being the only drivers yet to serve their pit stops, and Billman da Costa goes on to what be his 24th tour of the circuit. When the rear of the pitch, that's Julian Jones in. And what about George Louise? Does he come in? Yes, he does. Look at my contact booth window. Edwin Onofre will surely peel to the pits then. That's as far as they can take the fuel tanks, which is 24 laps and no further. And as he makes his way on in, well, right now, what can the number 10 driver do? Can he find a way to jump ahead of Jones? Where's David Adeyemi in all this? Well, here he is. He makes his way through. We look to the blimp camera here. This will give you a good perspective. And there's Louise leaving his pit stall. So Adeyemi gets back ahead. And also there's Jones leaving the pit lane. Adeyemi carrying on through with his old Hall corner. And Adeyemi is back into the lead. So the fuel saving that we thought Jones might have been able to do has not materialised in terms of moving him ahead of Adeyemi in the pit stops. And in fact, Adeyemi has gained. That gap has opened up to 1.2 seconds, and it is now going to give an opportunity to be able to push onwards and try to run away. But as we do say hello there to George Louise _10 in the Twitch chat. Glad to have you tuned in, George. And well, I hope all is well with yourself and you're having a good weekend. As our drivers make the way out towards what will be, excuse me, the hilltop and down towards the Hislop chicane once again. Still more to come here over the distance, and plenty of battling, I suspect, will be on the cards before all is said and done, albeit at this time you would imagine that David Adeyemi will be trying to make sure that gap does not come back down. Conversely, Jones will be pushing hard, and George Louise losing some time in the pits. In fact, his pit stop being 2 seconds longer in totality compared to Jones, and therefore he stays in P3, and I think he'll be now looking in his rearview mirror, wondering whether Edwin Onofre is going to get closer, because Onofre's pit stop has seen the gap between Louise and himself practically halved. It was 9 seconds, it's now 4.5 seconds. So Onofre with what is approximately another 7 laps to go after this one, knowing the chase is still on, and he may have an opportunity here to potentially take a swipe at the podium before all is said and done. As he comes in towards Lodge Bend, and through the right-hander return, number 11 over the crest of 12. Let's not also forget our AM-class drivers in. Blake Phillips leading the way in a very controlled fashion at the moment in P5. Not really close enough to change Onofre anymore, and not under pressure from Shahi Zahair behind, albeit Zahair and Onofre both being pro drivers. But Phillips definitely on course for that free contact cup in the AM class, it would seem, as Zahair continues to follow suit. We then have to go to what is P9 for your second place AM driver of Glenn Bratton. And Bratton's definitely had a very interesting first half of the season so far, including today, where he's been absolutely on the offensive for a top 5 finish in the AM class in each and every round, but it hasn't quite come the way he's wanted it to necessarily, as meanwhile we've had a change of lead, and that is Julian Jones, who's got very far ahead of David Adeyemi as Adeyemi comes down on the hilltop and in towards what is Hislops. Have they swapped places? My gut feeling says yes, they have. I haven't got anything to suggest there's been an instant for Adeyemi. It looks as though he may have just relinquished the position to Jones. Well, they swapped places, that's for certain. And Adeyemi now, as a result, releasing Jones, whether that's been team orders or whether it's been a mistake that Adeyemi's made, or perhaps a slowdown he's picked up for track limits and he's had to serve it. I don't know the story. What I can tell you is the outcome or the consequences that Jones, you see him there making his way through the bottom end of the camera, is that Julian Jones is now your race leader. David Adeyemi is P2, and George Louise now in P3 has a new target in front of him, albeit 3.8 seconds up the road, and he's still got some work to do to try and chase that target down. But coming back to our analysis of the AM class, well, Glenn Bratton in P2, the class is in P9, as you can see him here, and was the yellow and red machine, chasing after Kyle Moraes, who's 1.2 seconds up the road, and Bratton matching Moraes lap for lap, time for time. And then you do have Billman da Costa in a bit of a lonely what is P3 in the AM class, and I do have it saying on my data here that he's yet to take his pit stop. I believe he may have taken his pit stop, and that might be a little bit erroneous, because otherwise how he's been able to make that fuel tank last so long, well, he's keeping some secrets from us, I can tell you that, because he is looking very much right now in a very comfortable third place spot in the AM class, P11 overall. Tom Bryce is between him and Marlon Brandle and the all yellow machine there, the AM driver, making his way through P4 in class, P13 overall. There's Bryce, you can see just in the foreground of the camera shot, and then you do have last line AM drivers who are running with the retirements of Nick Bader and Mark Senegal, where there's only 5 AM drivers currently, and here is Nick Yakubov, who's running in that 5th place spot of the AMs, P15, the last of our running drivers on the lead good lap. We have had James Logsdon make his way back out, but he's 5 laps down in P16, and after that damage picked up from that nasty shunt into the tyre barrier on what is the inside right of the car coming through turn number 5, well, James Logsdon now will be knowing the fact this has all gone a bit backwards. If he finishes, however, I believe he will be taking home will be the Free Content Cup in the Pro class, albeit it definitely will be a big knock and a knock of the wind to his sails, and that is going to be something which you don't want at the end of the day, and it just slightly takes the confidence out of the driver going into what will be the second half of the season. But as he heads up the rise and in towards what it will be at the Druids Bend very shortly, where he's got to just try and keep his head down and focus on the here and now. And well, whilst the battles have spaced out a little bit here at Oulton Park, we are waiting to see whether we might get a coming together towards the end of this race between what is our top three, particularly between David Addy and George Louise. But it does seem as though ITD West have swapped Jones and Addy around. Jones is the fastest driver in this top three. Addy is about 2 tenths on average faster than Louise, so it might be where they finish currently. And elsewhere, further afield, it does look as though a lot of our battles are now starting to calm down and settle away. Albeit saying that, Glenn Bratton was able to take 4 attempts out of Kai Moraes on the previous lap, and as they come across the line this time, well, Moraes in fact adds 2 attempts to that gap. So Bratton not quite fast enough to close down Kai Moraes regularly, and while these two just pushing each other the distance. Marlon Brandle, meanwhile, he's trying to chase down Tom Price for what will be another couple of points in the hunt for P12 as he makes his way out of Druids Corner. Differences in lines there, and Marlon Brandle right now just playing it smart and safe as he tries to hunt after Bryce. As they come out of turn number 11 and over the rise in towards another lap. Well, let's ride on board here and take you through a lap of the Oulton Park Island circuit as Brandle heads down in towards turn 1. Into Hull Corner we go, braking out about 125 metres to corner apex, trail braking and carrying all the speed over the apex curb, and now in towards Denton's. Here it's flat out into the right-hander. You've got to be sensitive on the steering and braking nice and early here in towards Cascades. Oh my goodness, and a big moment there for Marlon Brandle. The car snaps one way, then the other, and into the barrier, and Marlon Brandle's race comes to an absolutely abrupt halt there, and I think just braking a little bit too late. And for those wondering, there is a bump in the road coming down in towards Cascades, and you'll see he tried to brake after it, and I think he ended up braking with the rear tyres just coming off of the bump, and that is what unsettled the car as he then tried to turn on in, and Marlon Brandle being caught out there by the infamous Cascades corner. And well, it's no stranger to seeing cars run wide, and in the end ended up in the barrier, and Marlon Brandle had a frustrating moment there and losing all the progress he's made and what was looking to be an absolutely set run for P4 in the AM class, and he suddenly falls behind Nick Yakubov. As he brings himself back up to speed, that'll be to the pits as well, I suspect, with that nasty shunt into the barrier. And well, now heading onwards and down towards Hislop's Bend. Well, with only a couple of laps to go, it's not the way he's wanted his race to go at all. But from him, we do go back to where's the front of the field, and Jones pushing onwards to the new personal best off screen for Aaron Tigger at 34.644. That's going to move a bit closer to Kai Moraes. And well, I think Tigger will be feeling quite confident that he can close that gap up bit more before the end of the race, but he still does have what is 8 seconds to go down on Moraes, so therefore he's got a way to go before he can close that gap down. So all the drivers right now separated quite significantly here, and I think it'll be mistakes at this point to potentially bring those gaps back together, because even in the situation of Edwin Onofre, your P4 driver, well, he's managed to get the gap to George Louise down to 2 seconds, and he is setting personal best, but he comes into the pits, and Onofre, I think, may have made a miscalculation on fuel here as he comes on in. Well, this is another surprise, and not a welcome one to be certain, as we're on to lap 30, and well, at the current trajectory, we will get 32 laps of racing here. In fact, Onofre picking up a drive-through penalty for track limits and instant points, as meanwhile Marlon Brandle comes into the pits for repair work after that shunt to the barrier, what was the Cascades Bend only moments ago. So Onofre comes out the pits after a drive-through, and Shahi Zaher takes P5 Onofre right behind him as they head on down, and we look back from the rear of the number 9 car for ITD West Senior Vice President, and there you can see that gap, it's not too big, and that is going to be another turn in the tail right towards the end of this race, and can Onofre potentially recover that P5 overall? because if he can, well, they'll put him ahead of Zaher, make sure he doesn't lose too much ground in the overall championship standings. But the problem will be in the fact that he has lost some major points in yielding that position to Blake Phillips, and Blake Phillips now taking P4, and he won't be upset about the fact he's now gaining even more points in his AM Championship campaign, and in fact he'll have a bit of an advantage over what will be Nick Bader going into the second half of the season. The higher he finishes right now, the more comfort that's going to give him in being the championship leader into the second half of the campaign. But immediately look at this from Onofre, you can see behind, chasing down Zaher. He's not happy at all with the drive-through penalty, and right now Onofre, I think he'll very quickly cool himself down and go on the offensive, but it is going to be the duel at Druids as they head in towards the infamous right-hander. But this time Onofre just watches and waits as we ride on board and look from the inside of the number 99. He gets an absolutely brilliant run. Zaher goes to the fence in the middle of the road, but Onofre's going to squeeze his way out the inside here. Classic move, and Zaher gives him the space to be able to breathe as they head out to Lodge Bend, and Onofre charging back into position there, immediately taking the place back. But you would have to imagine Onofre will be absolutely fuming with himself in yielding P4, but he'll be happy with the fact he's recovered one place back at least on a fellow pro driver. But 9 points have now gone astray, and it's not been the way he's wanted it go today. But from them, we've also got Jon Lauzon getting a bit closer to Tom Bryce on the penultimate lap of this race for our leaders, but they are effectively still on lap number 30 as they dance and dice their way out of Hislops and Knickerbrook. Up the hill they go in towards what will be Water Tower Corner, named given the fact there is a massive water tower there in order to provide water for the local village and for the circuit. And as they head in towards what will be Druid Bend at turn at number 10, through the woods they go, and those trees all absolutely standing stark in contrast to the blackness of the tarmac. Was they head into the braking zone there. Bryce going defensive once, Lauzon in the inherent to tuck him behind, not able to find a way through this time around as the drivers come out of the corner, albeit it's going to be a run now on the start finish line stretch, and Lauzon's going to look to the inside here into Old Hall Corner. He's going to go all in for it, and it's going to be a bit of door-to-door rubbing between the two of them as they head on to the brakes. Lauzon there moves it to P12 initially. Can he get the move sealed and done? And the answer is yes, he can, as they make the way down the hill and in towards Cascades. I don't think Bryce is going to have a counter-attack at this point as much as he runs close. Meanwhile, making their way onto their final lap and just about heading to Denton's and Cascades, here is Julian Jones. We are at the final lap. Don't read too much into the time at the top centre of your screen. He is behind by the best part of 5 minutes, but Jones right now just squeezing in one more lap before all is said and done here today, and a comfortable advantage of 3.5 seconds from David Adeyemi, who's got a little bit of traffic in front of him, the former Nick Yakubov, who stays out to the inside there and respects the blue flags, and George Louise a further 4 seconds back. This top three now staying static, and I think these top three separated by the respective pace of the drivers and just how hard they've had to work today. Shahi Zaher on the back of Edwin Onofre, hoping he can perhaps find a little bit of an opportunity to come back for P5 right in the closing stages, but the gap is 6/10 at the moment, and it is gradually going outwards, not inwards. So Onofre right now in control of this, it would seem. And with what is the second half of the lap now to go, he'll be feeling as though all he's got to do is now what is the back end of the lap in order to bring home a top 5 finish and make amends for what was that difficulty in terms of that drive-through penalty. But here is your leader as he heads in towards Druids. Behind him, David Adeyemi, well, in P2 and feeling happy, and George Louise there in P3, still trying to stay in close company. But as they head out of Druids, only one more corner awaits them, one major corner, and that is none other than the Lodge Corner. But as he exits right now, it's been a controlled drive from Julian Jones, and he will break the hold that James Logsdon has had on victories this season, because round number 4 of the championship falls the IT West driver Julian Jones, overall in pro class ahead of David Adeyemi P2. It's a 1-2 for IT West, and George Rees takes P3 there, his first oval podium of the season. What a drive from the Brazilian driver. Blake Phillips will come home to take his first AM victory of the season, and with it, the free Content Cup in the AM class. What a drive for the Pit Club sim racing driver. In the end, absolutely faultless to a T with P4. Edwin Onofre holds on to P5 ahead of Shahi Zaher, and then it will be Aaron Lahr in the lime green machine, who's had a little bit of an up and down day today, but in the end he ends on a high, one of his best performances of the season, and takes P7 as he comes across the line. It will then be a further 7 seconds before we get the runner-up in the AM class. Glenn Bratton with his first AM podium of the season takes P2, P8 overall there, some huge points for Bratton, and then it will be a further 20 20 seconds back, but still some fighting going on here, minus the front bumper. That is going to be Kyle Morais, who's trying to hold on here versus Aaron Tiggott to take what will be P9. It's going to be a drag race to line, and in the end, it will be Morais who takes it, I believe. Tiggott's almost there, but he's not quite, separated by only a tenth at the end in the battle for P9, P10. And then we do have Jon Lauzon, who will be finishing just behind him in due course, ladies and gentlemen. But that will be all of your racing here today. Jon Lauzon taking P11 ahead of Tom Bryce, and it will be Bilman da Costa P13 with Nick Yakubov and Marlon Brandl finishing a lap down. Well, as we look to the what will be, excuse me, won't quite get the scenic view there as our replay tape has been cut short slightly, but what we can do is bring you those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries, and here they are for what has been, well, round number 4 of the championship. And as we can see, Julian Jones in the end taking victory for ITU West Interns Pro Esports Division, and will in for, of course, the team not just known as that, but also inspired by Ayrton Senna, aka Gap Hunters, taking that victory by 2 seconds over ITU West Senior Vice Presidents David Adeyiyi, but it's a 1-2 for the ITU West outfit as a whole. George Louise completing what has been that overall podium there, the privateer taking his first overall podium of the season, a determined drive, not quite on the pace of the top two, but kept them under pressure for as long as he could. And then Blake Phillips, how about that? His first AM win of the season, and his first top 5 overall as well. The Pit Club Sim Racing driver doing enough there to bring on home what we believe is the AM Cup crown for the Free Content Cup. Edwin Onofre at P5 there, the privateer, in a frustrating end to day 9 that he could have had P4, but P5 is what he's had to settle with, and Shahi's ahead, just being relegated to P6 for Onofre's late move, and the IT West Senior Vice President's driver, 9, that the top 10 has always been on the cards today, but it's not quite the top 10 perhaps he wanted. Aaron Law was P7, ahead of Glenn Bratton, the run-up in the AM class, and then we had Kyle Morais and Aaron Tiggott in their late fight, but it was Morais who finished P9 ahead of his American rival, Tiggott taking P10. Bilman da Costa, best of P11, bringing on home there. What was an AM podium, P3 in the class. The Bearpoke Zero driver happy with that, finishing a lap down ahead of Jon Lauzon, who started from the pit lane to take P12. He won't be too upset with that. Tom Bryce was P13 ahead of Nick Yakubov, and well, Yakubov there being P4 in the AM class ahead of Marlon Brandl, who in the end finished 4 laps down, but classified still as a finisher as he finished the race within 5 laps of the race winner. He'll be your 5th and final finish in the AM class, P15. It was Bear Pope Zero's driver, James Logsdon there, P16. He'll be also classified as a finisher, and 9, with that result, he does bring home where's the Free Content Cup in the Pro class, subject to any stewards' inquiries. And then we had the 2 unfortunate retirements, and the biggest surprise of all, of course, Nick Bader there with the early retirement, but also the third place AM Drivers Championship driver Mark Senegal. Well, both of them there with these early retirements, and the Sunday GT Turtles driver will know it is a huge blow in his championship campaign. Coming on to the Pro class then, the individual results, because we had 18 starters and what were 16 finishers, and of those, 10 on the lead lap. We'll come in to that Pro class, we do see Julian Jones there, your winner, ahead of David Adeyiyi, a 1-2 for IT West, and then the privateer George Louise completing the Pro podium. Edwin Onofre at P4, ahead of IT West Senior Vice Presidents Shahi Zahair, who round off the top 5. Now it's the privateers of Aaron Law, Kyle Morais, and Aaron Tiggott, rounding off the top 8 in the Pro class and the lead lap finishers. It was a lap down to both Jon Lauzon and Tom Bryce, with the IT West Interns Pro Esports Division having the worst of the luck of his IT West crew today, and then Bear Pope Zero's James Logsdon 5 laps down at the finish in a frustrating day, but still classified as a finisher and taking home some key points that could prove pivotal in the Drivers' Championship in the second half of the season. In the AM class, 3 bonus points went the way of Blake Phillips, and the Pit Club Sim Racing driver will be absolutely proud and pleased to be tasting what is the winner champagne today, and taking that victory by almost 31 seconds over Glenn Bratton. But the privateer putting on a solid performance ahead of Bilman da Costa in his own way as well, taking home a well-deserved P3 in the AM class for Bear Pope Zero. He was a lap down, as was Nick Yakubov's Slipstream Sloths, and Yakubov there having a challenging day today, not the way he's wanted it to go. And there's 4 laps down there to Marlon Brandl, the privateer in the 277, finishing off the AM finishers. Retirements found their way to Nick Bader and also Sunday GT Turtles Mark Senegal, and as we mentioned earlier, those two being the 3 main belligerents in the AM Drivers' Championship going into the mid-season break. That is definitely going to have a huge impact, and Blake Phillips theoretically will now take the AM Championship lead before round number 5. But that's how they finished, ladies and gentlemen, and what a race it has been here today at the Oulton Park Island Circuit in the United Kingdom. It always serves up surprises, and today has been no exception. But the big question many of you have on your lips is, how did the free Content Cup rounds 1 through to 4 of the season finish in the end after all stewarding's verdict. And I'm pleased to say, ladies and gentlemen, we do have the results available. And well, here we go. Then here are the Drivers' Championship standings after 4 rounds, and particularly for the free Content Cup. And starting with the Pro class, as we can see, James Logsdon doing enough in the end in order to bring it home, despite finishing all the way down in what was P16. However, what is most notable, of course, is that his 21-point advantage has been slashed to a degree by Jon Lauzon, whose 11th place finish definitely enabled him to close a little bit of the distance. But look there as well, Edwin Onofre has now moved much closer to Lauzon. The gap between second and third, only 7 points, and Onofre may be the one to watch out for in the second half of the season. George Louise has fallen to P4, but he's only 5 points off of the top 3. Don't count him out yet. He can still be on the attack all the way through to the end, with David Addy in P5 there, and we'll know that today that second place has definitely moved him a bit further up the order. In fact, he's moved into the top 5 because Aaron Lahr now falls to P6, only a point behind, and it's a further 2 points to Julian Jones, whose victory today also netted him a huge points injection and bringing this championship very much alive. Tom Bryce sits P8 ahead of Shahi Zahir, and it's Kyle Rise who completes the top 10, with Aaron Tigger in P11, best of the rest and the last of our pro drivers. Then coming on to the AM standings after 4 rounds, and here we can see Blake Phillips with that victory and that P4 overall, but a victory in the AM class and the 3 bonus points with it. He now leads by 31 points over Glenn Bratton and Nick Bader, both on 130 apiece. And, well, what a change in fortunes. Bill Acosta sits further 5 points behind in P4 on 125 points, ahead of Nick Yakubov by 10. That's your top 5. And then Mark Senegal falls all the way down to P6 for that early retirement, with Roger Ganesh, Carl Peterson, Marlon Brandel and Jermaine Warren complete in the AM top 10. And it's Jason Seelin and Navru Kumar who complete the AM Championship standings. But just to reiterate then, and a big congratulations to our free Content Cup winners, and here they are. Firstly in the Pro class, the 42 of James Logsdon for Bear Pope 0. Well done to him. And also in the AM class, a big congratulations to Blake Phillips in the 225 for Le Pit Club Sim Racing. Both of them taking home the free Content Cup crowns in their classes, and also the first prize of the season, which is $5. But the big question, of course, they have is, can they continue it into the Roval Cup for the second half of the season? Well, the pressure will be on them because they're the championship leaders in the overall Drivers' Championships as well, and we look forward to seeing what they can do in the second half of the championship campaign. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the Middle of the Pack Racing League community in terms of how you can be on the grid for future rounds of the Championship or future series that we host over the course of 2025, because there's never been a better time to be on the grid at the Middle of the Pack Racing League community, we do recommend firstly you join the official Discord, invite link available on screen. That's the beating heart of the community, and you won't find a more friendly North American based sim racing community than the Middle of the Pack Racing League. But that's not to say if you're not based on the North American content you can't become part of the community. And indeed, the community is open to all, whether you're based locally in the United States of America or further abroad. But if you don't want to go to Discord, perhaps you're more of a social media person, you can, of course, follow us on Twitter, and the MOP Racing Twitter handle is there at twitter.com/MOP Racing, where you can stay up to all the latest news and announcements for Middle of the Pack Racing League. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, attention now turns to next time, and in 2 weeks' time, we will be kicking off the second half of the championship campaign at the Phoenix Raceway. The Roval Cup will get underway in round number 5, and well, we have seen 3 wins apiece in with the Pro and the AM classes of the big names of James Logsdon and also Nick Bader respectively. James Logsdon still holds on to the lead of the Pro Championship despite the difficulties he had at Oulton Park. How his rivals have gained some significant ground, and in the AM Championship, Nick Bader has lost his grasp on the championship crown, and instead now it has fallen to Blake Phillips. However, will that be the continuation of the trend, or will we see the drivers who have dominated the first half of the season pick up the pieces and get rolling again? Well, for all that and more, you'll have to tune in 2 weeks' time, because we'll be back on Saturday the 8th of March 2025 to pick up all the racing action as if it were live from the Phoenix Raceway, with the racing getting underway there on what will be Wednesday the 5th of March. But until then, we're in the Middle of the Pack Racing League. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. Until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, as always, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.